This is 9/11 Freefall.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of 9/11 Freefall. I am the host, Andy Steele. I don't have a guest tonight. I did have one scheduled. I even recorded the interview. It was with Brian Maxwell. Unfortunately, a little glitch in the recording software resulted in that interview not being caught completely. Every other word is skipped in it, so we're going to redo it this coming week. So tonight you are stuck with me, but we're going to have a good time. We're going to be answering questions that come into the webinars that Richard Gage and myself have been doing, mostly Richard, every Thursday and Sunday through AE911truth.org. And I'll be answering some of the questions that we don't address during those webinars because we try to keep those webinars focused on the technical aspects of the controlled demolition evidence. Of course, I'm talking about the controlled demolitions of Towers 1, 2, and 7 of the World Trade Center, which took place on September 11th, 2001. We've been at it for several weeks now. And some of the questions that we get are good questions. They're just kind of off the topic when we're just trying to focus on the science of that day. But I wanted to give those questions a fair hearing, so we're going to be doing it here on 9/11 Freefall. A lot of these questions are going to be focusing on our outreach efforts and what a real investigation looks like, among other things, too, are asked during these webinars that we are saving for moments like this here on 9/11 Freefall. And it's a good opportunity because, again, our guest interview didn't work out tonight. So I'm going to get to that. Before I do that, though, I'm going to do what I've been doing every show since it started 4 years ago. We're going to take our 10 seconds of silence to remember the victims of 9/11, their families, and all the people who died in the wars that followed 9/11. We're going to do that beginning now. And that is 10 seconds.
If we're in a free country, why are we afraid to just talk about an event that was the most traumatic event in our history? I originally believed the official story. I aggressively defended it. When I first started cracking open that little window that there could be possibly more to this story, I went through every emotion, just like probably a lot of you here who didn't originally believe it or consider it are going through. And I didn't want to believe it. I came up with every excuse not to believe it.
Any building that succumbs to fire, that collapses, starts usually with large gradual deformations, and the building will begin to fall over, not straight down through the path of what was the greatest resistance. These buildings exploded. We have witnesses that hear sounds of explosions.
We started walking down the stairs. We made it to the 8th floor. Big explosion.
You'd get down below and you'd see molten steel running down the channel rails. Like you're in a foundry.
Yeah. Like lava.
Like lava.
From a volcano.
This is all direct evidence of explosive controlled demolition. Interesting thing is fire can't create any one of these, let alone all 10.
If the FDNY and other firefighters start speaking out about this is going to explode, and it's going to open a lot of people's eyes to what really happened. Make this a normal thing to talk about so that this will spread like wildfire. It's starting now. From speaking out and starting this website and meeting Richard and a lot of the other incredible people here tonight, I've also met some military intelligence officers that have taught me a lot. And I asked one of them, how do we win? We can't get through the media. We can't get through most of our friends and family because it's too scary to talk about. How do we do this? And he said, it's easy, Eric. You just shine the light. And he said, just come from a place of love and not fear. Shine the light.
The views expressed on this show by guests and the host on issues outside of the 9/11 controlled demolition evidence are the opinions of those individuals alone and do not necessarily reflect those of architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth.
So, quick bit of news before we get started with our questions for this evening. Carl Golovin, he was on the show several weeks ago, former worker with the U.S. government, was there on the site with Ground Zero investigating pieces and looking up for computer parts in the wreckage of World Trade Center 7 after it was taken away. He's been a busy activist, and at the museum they had an event. It was a panel with different people in the corporate media. I believe people from CNN were there, and he asked them about the 48 pages. No, I did not misspeak. I'm not talking about the 28 pages, the redacted information from the congressional inquiry from 2002 that many people say point to Saudi involvement in the attacks. That's not our focus here at AE 9/11 Truth or 9/11 Free Fall, even though we have called for that 9/11 or Transparency Act for the victims of 9/11 or victims and survivors of 9/11 Act to be expanded to include points about Building 7. No, the 48 pages that Carl Golovin was referring to were the 48 pages that compose the Beyond Misinformation booklet, which was released by AE 9/11 Truth in September of this previous year. So he asked them about that. They weren't fully aware of it, of course, or claimed that they weren't, even though many people in the corporate media were sent copies of it. And he gave them copies, and it actually made it onto the museum's video footage of this panel discussion. And he went on and talked about Building 7 and AE 9/11 Truth in that clip. I was going to play it for you tonight, but I guess when it rains, it pours, and for some reason I'm having difficulty downloading the clip. But I will have that available, but you can also look that up online. The name of the YouTube video is CNN Politics Campaign 2016, Like, Share, Elect Special Program. Again, that's CNN Politics Campaign 2016, Like, Share, Elect Special Program. And if you want to fast forward to the point where Carl Golovin asks about the 48 pages, then you can go to 27:11. That's 27 minutes and 11 seconds. That's where you'll hear his question and the response to it. So good job, Carl, and we need more of this. This is a great question to ask our people as we do our activism. And we got a presidential election going on right now. It looks like it's going to be Donald and Hillary, at least at this point in history. I don't know what's going to happen at the conventions or how the rest of the races are going, but I've been watching the TV news. I'm in Arizona right now, visiting family, and have access to cable, and I'm just blown away by the circus that this whole process for selecting the supposed leader of the nation has become. And I think it really reflects just how out of whack our outlook, our policies have become as people in this country. I mean, first of all, and this is my personal opinion, obviously, so take it for what it's worth, but I believe the whole notion of party affiliation is kind of gimmicky to begin with. The idea that you can boil down opinions into just two political parties is quite silly. People's priorities are screwed up as well. The fact that people focus on such superficial things as what is the sex or the background of the candidate. Are they saying outrageous stuff? Just how scripted a lot of these events are. And then even when they're unscripted, we have a particular candidate, I won't mention the name, going out and just saying immature, outrageous things. Again, these are my opinions. Things I couldn't imagine the presidents of the past saying. And when you go online and you try to look up people's analysis of it, it just seems to be slanted towards one party or the other, almost like people have picked a side, and that is it. No kind of in-depth, independent analysis, or at least not a lot of it. Not as much as I'd seen in the years previous. I was working on a project for AE 9/11 Truth, and I considered it such a breath of fresh air to pick up an Indian broadcast, a broadcast out of India talking about current events, and it was so mature, so focused, not focused on being entertaining, not people trying to ham it up for the cameras as we have now in our supposed news, but just serious-minded people talking from every perspective of a particular issue, talking with sincerity, maturity, not shouting down the other people. It was a pleasure to listen to, whether I agreed with the speakers or not. This is something we need to return to in America. And the reason I'm bringing this up right now is because I've said it so many times here on the show before. I believe that the volume got turned up on this issue early on, and it scared people off from wanting to participate in the debate. Because when you have so much negativity associated with a discussion, people tend to shy away. People don't want to go anywhere near that. They don't want to get drawn into something that's going to drag down their mood. Life is tough enough already. And so if you have questions about Building 7, if you don't feel that the questions that AE 9/11 Truth have asked have been answered, and you're receiving nothing but insults and patronizing dismissals of your concerns, it tends to turn people off. They don't want to have their feelings hurt. They don't want to be turned away and put in a bad mood because they know the truth. They know that it needs to be investigated again. They know there's something fishy about the way those buildings came down, but they don't want to get drawn into negativity. And I think this is what is ultimately bringing down the level of discourse in this country. It's bad. That's why we have so much difficulty getting any full acknowledgement from the entities that, on a superficial level, appear to control public opinion, at least have the loudest voice and give a perception that they represent the public. Even though talking to people privately, and especially when you get them alone, you can get most people to acknowledge that they question what happened to the Twin Towers in Building 7 on 9/11 and agree it should be investigated again, because that's the reasonable position to take. The evidence shows they were brought down in controlled demolitions that day. But it's so much more fun to focus on things that are not negative. You notice this when you go on to YouTube, and some of these numbers might be inflated artificially, but the videos that get the most hits are videos of people talking about movies. Talking about Batman and Superman, or the new Lord of the Rings movie. I don't know if there's a new Lord of the Rings movie, but you get my point. Whatever the big pop culture is, the Ghostbusters, talking about latest music videos. These are the things that people want to talk about, and these are the things that people want to focus on because it is positive. It is something that you can get lost in. It's a fantasy. It's not the real world. And I like a lot of these things myself too, but you have to be grounded because this is the world that we live in. This is the issues that really matter, is this one. There's no more important issue than this. 3,000 people died on September 11th. We should know why they died, how they died. We should know what forces were really at work in bringing about their demise when those buildings came down. Was it really the collapse caused by the airplane impacts and fires that NIST tells us? Or was it something else? If it was something else, why are they covering it up? Why don't they tell us? We can draw our own conclusions from that, but first we have to get an acknowledgement of what really happened, because it's so obvious. 105 feet of free fall on Building 7, acknowledged by NIST because of David Chandler. That doesn't happen unless you have preset explosives helping it along. I've said this so many times also on the show. This denial of its significance is almost measurable to the denial of math reality by the Big Brother government in the 1984 novel, when they got the main character, Winston Smith, to say that 2 + 2 = 5. It was a power play to get them to get him to acknowledge their control over reality, seemingly. But they don't control reality. They can just browbeat or torture or whatever public into agreeing with them because people don't want to go there. In this case, it's a case of people not wanting to get involved in something negative in many cases. They're not wanting to believe this, believing that their government would lie about something like this. But more people are acknowledging it. More people are facing the truth, and it is becoming more acceptable to embrace reality again, to embrace physics and common sense. So that's a good thing, and that is really the success of the 9/11 Truth movement so far. We haven't gotten that new investigation, but the first step towards that is breaking the taboo, breaking the silence of people, getting people to acknowledge it out in the open. So I think we're making some tremendous strides. We don't think so because our lives seem so short. But in the big span of human history, 15 years since the event took place, and even less than that the 9/11 Truth Movement has existed, that's pretty darn good. And think about all that we are changing as we wake people up to this, because, I don't live in a bubble. I know there's other issues, other reasons 9/11 may have happened. We don't know for sure the exact reasons, but we know that there are other scandals, other things going on. So when people wake up to the controlled demolition evidence, it's like opening a door to a rabbit hole, and people learn so many other things. So these steps, while they might not seem to be going fast enough for some people, they still have a huge impact. It's the blunt force trauma. Ever see Rocky VI, the last one, where he's too old to throw speedy punches and dance around, so they focus on just powerful body blows? They called it blunt force trauma. That was the whole strategy. Well, that's what 9/11 Truth is doing to the big lie that keeps a lot of our establishment together. All these mini lies. It's a blunt force trauma to the establishment that would allow a cover-up of the controlled demolition evidence to take place. So we are having tremendous success. We're going to keep on doing it. And part of it is being active, doing whatever you can. And we're certainly going to be facilitating that at AE 9/11 Truth more and more. In fact, I was talking last week about how AE 9/11 Truth did call for the Transparency Act to be expanded to include elements of Building 7, such as the input data on the Building 7, because NIST says that releasing it would jeopardize public safety. Well, now, so that nobody forgets that this exists, that this action alert was put out, we have a link up on ae911truth.org. You can go under what you can do at the very top of the web page, and once you click on that, a tab will appear, and at the very top of that, of what you can do, it will say Gov Outreach. Very top, above everything else. Because that's ultimately where it needs to go. That is ultimately where we are going to get this new investigation. And we're going to be putting out periodic action alerts, things people can do very simply to contact their government and let them know about the evidence that AE 9/11 Truth is bringing forward. And it's as simple, in this case, it's as simple as putting in your address and name. All right, if you know what street you live on, you can do this. You simply put in your name and address, indicate whether you're a Mr. or a Mrs., and it will generate a letter that will go to your senator's offices, to their inboxes, supporting AE 9/11 Truth and calling for the Transparency Act to be expanded to include the points about Building 7 that we have listed. Very reasonable points that the other side, when looking at these points individually, will have a hard time saying no to. It will be unreasonable for them to say no. And see, the more we ask, the more we fill up their inboxes with these requests, we know they're going to take notice. We know that they're going to have to figure out an answer as we apply more and more pressure. We saw this on C-SPAN. Congressmen, as they were getting questioned about Building 7 day in, day out on this program, were getting warned they would get a Building 7 question. One congressman acknowledged it. I was warned I would get a Building 7 question. So we made it an issue. All right, this is an issue for us. We need to make it an issue for them. And the way to do that is participate in actions like this and report back to us. We have a little box that comes up after you fill out your address and name on this action alert that says to report any responses you get to Senate at ae911truth.org. Absolutely. That is what you need to do. Let us know what kind of correspondence you've had with your senator's office so that we can reference it later if we're ever in contact with them again. And again, we're not going to stop with this call for the Transparency Act to be expanded. The 28 pages issue is hot in the news right now for some reason or another. Not sure if people speculate on why that is. I'm not going to. But since we are at AE 9/11 Truth, we're going to keep on focusing on the controlled demolition evidence. And so we're going to use this call for transparency to shine a light on aspects of the Building 7 investigation that haven't been transparent aspects of the Building 7 investigation that need to be transparent. And the more they ignore us, the more we will show them for what they are. And this is another success of AE 9/11 Truth. This was mentioned to me the other day by one of our volunteers, is that we have not had an investigation yet, but we have exposed, by asking these congressmen about it on TV and in all of our efforts before the C-SPAN campaign, we have exposed their unwillingness to do something about that, which is important in itself. A lot of people have this belief that if this were true, Congress would have done something about it. Congress would know something about it. They would address it. But their answers, when they were questioned on C-SPAN, their dismissive answers when somebody writes a letter to them and they send a letter back that doesn't even address the question, shows just how bad the problem is. So we got to keep putting on the pressure. Nobody does anything they'd rather not do unless they're afraid of something else. Not talking about violence, but I am talking about pressure. I am talking about calling them out in every public venue they speak at about why they're not doing something about the Building 7 issue. Just like Carl Golovin did, asking about reading the 48 pages. And you know what, folks? That is not the last you've heard of that, reading the 48 pages. I think that we need to do more with that. I think that's pretty darn brilliant. The 48 pages. And that's what you need to do when you see your congressman. Or let's say you want to go see your favorite presidential candidate. Let's say it's Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton or whoever ends up getting the nominations. Even if it's one of the third-party candidates, go up with a copy of Beyond Misinformation. You can get them at the AE 9/11 Truth store. And say, have you read the 48 pages? And if they start to talk about the 28 pages issue, you correct them, say, no, the 48 pages put out by AE 9/11 Truth outlining evidence of controlled demolition at the World Trade Center on September 11th. Have you read it? And see how they respond. Be very serious. Be very directed. Look them right in the eye. And then you'll see your real power, because they are more afraid of you than you should be of them. I've seen that. I'm not talking about intimidation other than intimidating them with the facts because they don't have theirs straight. So again, go to ae911truth.org, go to the What You Can Do tab at the top, click Gov Outreach, and if you haven't done this already, fill out your name and address, generate the letter to your senator. Seriously, this takes under 1 minute to do this. Very simple. And once you've done it, forward it to somebody else. Let them know about this effort. Get everyone you know to do it. Help them out if they don't know how to type in their name and address. If they don't know their address, get it and help them out and put it in. Again, the more people that do this, they take tallies of the issues. They don't even necessarily read every letter, but once they've read it, they'll know what the letter is as it comes in, and they'll take note of how many of the constituents are sending this in. And that is going to be the first step towards making them take notice of us. And we're going to have more of these action alerts coming out. So every time we have a new one, that Gov Outreach tab is going to be updated, and there'll be a new alert for you to act on and simply put in your information and send to them. So keep watching it. All right, so I wanted to dedicate tonight's show to questions that we get during the webinar series as they're going on that don't necessarily have anything to do with the evidence. Again, we try to keep the webinars focused on the evidence because that's what they are for. They're for these technical aspects of the 9/11 controlled demolition evidence for activists who maybe not clear on every aspect or who have been challenged on certain points. You can throw your questions at us. And also, and equally importantly, for new people, professional people who come to the webinars and maybe not familiar with this issue yet, and they're going to, and they want to check and see if we're serious or if there's anything to what we are talking about. We want to be able to field those questions. And we want the challenging questions, and we get lots of them. And Richard handles them very well. But some of these are focused more on our mission, some of these questions that we get, on our outreach efforts and where we're going as an organization. So while I don't ask them during the webinar series, because that is not part of our agenda for that particular program. I want them to be addressed here on 9/11 Freefall because there's some really good ones. So I made a list of them, and I don't really have a particular flow to them or a particular plan for which one I'm going to read first. I'm just going to sort of do the computer equivalent of picking them at random and see which one comes up first. So I guess we're just going to get started here. And I always encourage everybody to attend these webinars, just like with the action alert I was talking about before. If you are moved by the evidence that you witness, if you're a supporter of AE911truth.org, just take the website, the webpage, AE911truth.org/webinars, and send them to other people. Spread them around. Be a modern-day Paul Revere about this issue. So one of the first questions that I picked out, that I saw we received, says, I feel AE911truth.org has prepared a format palatable to most reasonable people, moderately educated at the least. How can we draw into this truth, drive Americans who are convinced the ABC, CNN, NBC, CBS, and Fox News channels are providing the end-all, be-all news? So it's asking, how can we reach the people that believe the corporate media is not lying to them about this? The main way, and this is just my opinion, and a lot of these questions are going to be, or answers to these questions are going to be based just off of my own opinion, my experience being at this for years, is simply to show them the evidence and show them examples of the corporate media overlooking the evidence or just dismissing it without any kind of reasonable argument. I really do believe that most people, when left to their own devices, when they don't feel that they're being pushed in one way or another, have discernment and can recognize a faulty argument when they hear one. And in the case of the corporate media, when they make these dismissive claims that anybody who talks about physics and common sense are conspiracy theorists, people see through that. That was, again, to mention the C-SPAN campaign, that was part of the motive for that whole push to ask the same question every day, is to have the audience see the recipients of the questions dismiss it even though the questions were reasonable. Because people remember that. Again, you don't care what the people in the corporate media think. You care what the audience thinks watching it. The corporate media will adjust as it sees the will of the people get stronger and stronger. So right now, a lot of what the corporate media is putting out is in response to what the people are asking for. And you notice that a lot of stuff, especially in this election, is about being quote-unquote anti-establishment. That's what's being promoted, and each media organization is trying to pretend like they are not the mainstream media. I think it's hilarious when Fox News calls itself or calls other networks the mainstream media as if they're somehow on the outside of that. But that's what they need to do in order to stay relevant. They need to pretend, at least, that they are somewhat anti-establishment, because that is the way the American public is going as it wakes up to issues like the 9/11 controlled demolition evidence and other issues as well. So it just requires people to be persistent and constantly pointing out the hypocrisy when they see it. And you just need to show it to people. We've talked before about media control. I've had people on this program who have focused on that. You can show them the YouTube videos on that topic, and I should bring on more guests that could talk about that. There's lots of examples of that, and the fact that very few corporations control all the media that we see in this country. So basically making these arguments. Some people are not going to be awakened no matter what you say, and they'll even take pride in not waking up to that. I know people like that too. They're not worth it. Again, you don't need to convince every single person in America. You just need to convince enough people who have that drive to do something and make the proper changes that need to take place to be successful. And then everybody else who has just been watching will go along with whoever the winner is in the end. So you just got to fight smarter, not harder. All right, next one is, do you think Bernie Sanders would consider a new investigation of 9/11? No, Bernie Sanders would not consider a new investigation of 9/11, at least based off of what he has said in the past. I've seen him on 2 separate instances when he was on C-SPAN's Washington Journal be questioned about Building 7, in particular evidence points that that were directly asked of him, and his basic response was like every other politician's. He said that he didn't think that it was a conspiracy. He thinks it was Al-Qaeda. That's kind of how he talks. I think it was Al-Qaeda who did it. So I don't really have much hope in Bernie Sanders. With regard to what my focus is and what the focus of AE 9/11 Truth is, he doesn't sound any different than anybody else who has run for that office of president. He has bought the official story hook, line, and sinker. And the fact that he would dismiss questions about Building 7, which is not asking if there's a conspiracy on 9/11, it's just asking about evidence of controlled demolition, which is different. It's not pointing to any complicity. The fact that he would go to talking about complicity and affirming his allegiance to believing it was an Al-Qaeda plot goes to show you that he does not even want to entertain this. He doesn't even want to go there. He just wants to get it behind him. So I don't really care where Bernie stands on other issues. When it comes to 9/11, he draws a big fat 0 in my book, and I don't think that he would do anything different on this issue than any of the other people who are seeking that office. Next question. Why is it that no matter how much we know about who did it, nothing happens to address the ones involved? Well, there are lots of different groups out there that are focusing on that, and various people who have written books on this. David Ray Griffin has written books on other aspects of 9/11, along with controlled demolition evidence too. And so people have looked into this. Problem is there's different opinions on who that is, and it's very difficult to get the officials to focus on opening up the case again if you start off with your conclusion. All right, then it sounds like you're just against that particular person. For instance, if you want to say, oh, Bush did it, then it sounds like you just have a thing against Bush. If you don't have any evidence to start off with, if you can't establish what happened, it's very difficult, if not impossible, to get into who did it. So we at AE 9/11 Truth have taken the very mature and scientific approach of saying we're not worrying about complicity. We are focusing just on the what, proving what is provable. And that is that those buildings were brought down in controlled demolitions. We've studied publicly available information. We've analyzed the dust. We found the nanothermitic residue there. And this is the case right here. 48 pages of beyond misinformation. This is the case. So once we get an acknowledgement of what happened, then others can look into the who. But you're not going to get anywhere until you can get them to acknowledge that an apple is an apple, as the famous 9/11 Truth video uses as an example. Because right now they're calling an apple an orange, and I'm talking about Building 7. It's very obviously a controlled demolition. You don't even need to jump too far into science and evidence to know this instinctively when you watch it go down. Now, we have jumped far into it in the science and the evidence. The Beyond Misinformation booklet lays it out. But just watching it, using your common sense, you know there's something not right about that. All right, they didn't work that hard to cover that up. It's the height of arrogance. 7 seconds, 105 feet of free fall. Drops like a rock. All right, just by the nature of its fall, it should be reinvestigated. On top of all the other things that AE 9/11 Truth has presented. All right, but they want to tell you that it's something else. They want to tell you that it was fire. It was thermally expanding beams pushing a girder off its seat. All right, so if you can't get them to acknowledge that first, how are you going to get them to acknowledge whoever was responsible for it? And there's so many different opinions on who was responsible. Educated opinions, pretty good ones, in my opinion, some of them are pretty bad. All right, but you can't get everyone to agree on that. But a lot of people, most people in 9/11 Truth will agree that Building 7 was brought down in a controlled demolition, so let's all focus on that. Because that's what we can unite everyone behind. That is where we're going to have the most success. So that is why we take that position. Next question. How will we obtain international support towards investigating and formalizing legal war crime charges against those responsible? Well, as I was just outlining, we first have to establish what happened and get that acknowledged. We need some kind of formal body to recognize that an apple is an apple. And to say that, hey, yeah, Building 7 wasn't all likelihood of controlled demolition. Think about this. If we could get the U.S. government to acknowledge that Building 7 was brought down with explosives, after calling us crazy for all of these years for saying it, their credibility would be at zero. That's why they're fighting us on this point. It's a lot easier. Yeah, it would be a heck of a lot easier just to point a finger at someone without any hard evidence and talk about that. But it wouldn't be responsible, and it would be a lot easier for them to dismiss us, claim that we have an agenda. Point to somebody else who says something different. Keep everybody divided and conquered. So, again, you want to bring legal war crime charges against those responsible. How are you going to do that? Or who are you going to do that against? And how are you going to do that when you can't get it fully acknowledged? It is proven, but you can't get it fully acknowledged by any kind of official body. So, in this case, you want to bring charges against a particular person. Let's say it's in the administration. Whoever you're filing the charges with would ask, well, what's your proof? So then you would have to go into proving that the buildings were brought down in controlled demolitions. So it's a lot better to get that established first before pointing a finger at someone and getting into the who. That's just common sense. You got to prove that the crime took place. And it's a lot harder to do that because there is a cover-up going on, I understand, but this is the responsible way to go about it. All right, is there a worst-case scenario, a point in time when you would pack it in and unfortunately admit defeat? Wow, that's a good question. At what point am I going to quit doing this and get on with my life? Well, I got nothing better to do right now, and 3,000 people did die, and a lot of our foreign and domestic policies here in the United States are based off of this event. And I figure, hey, what the heck? Let's just do this for the next couple of decades and do some rabble-rousing and make those people who would like to keep this quiet and cover it up nervous for a little while longer. There is no more important issue than this. I'm being a little sarcastic tonight. You got to have fun in this broadcast, but in all seriousness, this is heavy-duty stuff, and I tend to lose focus of that sometimes because I've been in this so long. You kind of get used to the fact that the buildings were brought down in controlled demolitions and all the implications that come with that, but this is not something you can simply look away from. And so, when do we give up? I will never give up. There may be times when I have to move on to some other method of fighting for this issue. There may be a time in life when AE 9/11 truth can no longer exist, God forbid, but I will always personally be involved in some form or another. Who knows, maybe I can be an old man and have some disease, be battling for my life, but I will still be talking about Building 7 to the nurses that come in and give me my medicine. I will always be advocating for a new investigation until the day I die, because this is too important. So I am never giving up. And you should never give up either if you're out there. There are new generations coming into this world. People who are going to be the future congressmen, the future senators. Those are the people we need to reach out to. The people who were not as coherent on that day as the rest of us were, who don't have that emotional baggage associated with a 9/11 event. And so if we just keep on pushing and we keep on talking about this, removing the taboo from it, then there'll be no reason to quit. We're going to be making progress, and it will be fully acknowledged, just like the abolitionists never quit. And they eventually got the 13th Amendment passed, and the slaves were freed. All right, just have to be patient. So I'm not giving up, but for each individual, that's a question they have to ask themselves. But there's always going to be a 9/11 truth movement. We've made that much of an impression on society that I don't think we're ever going to go away. If the truth about 9/11 ever comes out, do you think that it would be bad for the country? No, I do not think it would be bad. In fact, we published a pamphlet 9/11 Truth Good for America that outlines why this would be the greatest thing that ever happened for the United States. Too many people associate their identities with their government as if that somehow represents all of the great people beneath it. I've said this so many times. Barack Obama doesn't represent me. I mean, he happens to be a person that got the job, but he doesn't speak for me. I speak for me. He's just a guy. Same goes for the next president. Same goes for the president before him and all the people in the White House. If you came to find out, looking into the implications and the cover-up of the 9/11 controlled demolition evidence, if you come to find out that a person in government had some kind of hand in it or had taken part in the cover-up and was being prosecuted for it, you wouldn't say, oh, that's terrible for me. Oh, that's a horrible reflection on me. I didn't do it. I didn't do 9/11. I didn't have anything to do with planning it or orchestrating it, with rigging the explosives in the buildings. All I'm doing is talking about physics and common sense and pointing to it and say, hey, this needs to be investigated again. So it wouldn't be bad for me, because when the truth came out, I'd say, yeah, there you go, I told you so. It wouldn't be bad, though, for the housewife in Peoria, Illinois, who stayed on the fence this whole time either. It shouldn't reflect on her individual situation. Now, what would it do to geopolitics and all these other things, the economy? I have no idea. And I think this might be more in tune with what the questioner and other questioners who have raised this same point have asked. What would it do to America? Well, let the truth be told, though the heavens may fall. Look, anything built on a lie does not have a strong foundation. All right? Anything built on a lie eventually will come down, just like building 7. 7 seconds free fall acceleration, and it needs to. All right? Because when you're living with a lie, it's a very stressful existence, and you're constantly worrying about keeping it covered up. That's no way for any person to live. That's no way for any country to live. So yes, it would be good for America. As I've said time and time again, if we could do this, a group of citizens coming together and taking on a lie this big and getting it exposed and acknowledged for all to see, it would be one of the greatest stories ever told in our entire history. It would scare off anybody from ever orchestrating something like this again. So, at least for 100 years or so. That's good enough for me. That makes it worth my while. So I think it would be good for America. And if you want to hear more about that, just download that brochure from ae911truth.org, 9/11 Truth Good for America, and you can read more on that. This one says, if all it takes to bring down a skyscraper in the U.S. is an office fire, shouldn't all skyscrapers be closed until the problem is corrected? Well, you would think. I mean, according to NIST logic, a few thermally expanding beams can bring a 47-story steel frame high-rise down in a matter of seconds. This puts our firefighters in danger. This is a point we've talked about a lot on this show. If we want to get nuts, if we want to just drink NIST Kool-Aid and pretend the official story makes sense, then we need to close all of these high-rise office buildings and make sure that we've invested all the millions or billions of dollars into them to prevent this horrible thermal expansion from compromising one girder and killing any firefighters that might be inside these buildings fighting these very fightable fires. I mean, think about this. They had pulled the firefighters out of Building 7. I believe, personally, that was done because they had watched the two towers come down, and they had already lost a lot of firefighters that day. But those fires that were inside Building 7 were fightable. And, I mean, in fact, they were burned out in the area of collapse initiation beforehand. So that's another issue altogether. But according to NIST logic, had those firefighters been inside, they would have died that day. And if this phenomenon ever happens again, this sudden, complete structural failure because of a few thermally expanding beams, firefighters are in danger. They would have no time to get out. So yes, all steel frame high-rises should be shut down and reevaluated, and tons of money should be invested into them. I can't even count the amount of money that should be invested in them to make them safe for the firefighters and for the people inside. You could have a fire break out and it could kill everybody in the building. So yeah, if we want to believe NIST logic, certainly. We got a lot of work to do here in America to make these buildings safe then. Not a question, but a comment in regards to the vast number of architects and engineers who do not know of World Trade Center 7 or who have never questioned the government's conspiracy theory or who don't care to know of any criminal acts by government. All are TV's news watchers, and this shows us the mainstream news propaganda is more powerful than their professional degrees. Oh, that's an interesting comment, and I tend to agree, except I would just warn against generalizing people. And this is a common thing that people do when they first wake up to this, and you get indignant, and you get mad at the rest of the world for being a sheeple. I hate that word, calling people sheeple. I mean, why should you call another human being a sheep? It's wrong. At one point, you didn't know about the controlled demolition evidence, and you were right along with them. And I don't think it's as simple as that. I don't think it's a question of like one group is smart and another group is just mindless followers, watching television. I think a lot of people have different motivators for why they want to not deal with this. Some people got enough on their plate in America, just trying to keep the bills paid and keep their kids fed. Some people agree with us. A lot of people agree with us. They just don't know what you can do about it. And their attitude is you're only alive once on this planet, and spend your time not getting involved in negative things. Now, that doesn't necessarily make them a bad person for thinking like that. I don't agree with that. But I have friends who think that same way. They're very good friends to me. I don't dismiss them or think of them as some kind of sheeple. So, there's a lot of people who watch TV propaganda. They watch it to keep a general idea in their mind of what's going on in the world, but they don't necessarily believe all of it, from my experience. They know we're being lied to about a bunch of things. They just don't have the time or the interest to get involved. And that's fine if things are going good, but in my view, an issue like this is so important, people should have a general knowledge of it. And that's how I approach it. But just think about this and check your own attitude, because, if somebody comes at you and starts calling you names like a sheeple or questioning your intelligence or calling you a drooling zombie or whatever, are you going to be receptive to their message? Are you going to want to listen to them? So we're in the business of winning people over, not scaring them off or ticking them off. So you got to be understanding and generous in your outlook towards folks and forgiving too, and that's the way to win more people over. And just approach it with the reasonable argument of it needing to be investigated again, because it is kind of weird the way it came down. Most people will agree with you if you go at it from that angle and then lead into the science. Next question. If it's proven that NIST intentionally lied, do you feel that they should be charged with treason? Oh, that's very good. I don't know. I don't know what the legal definition of treason is. I mean, I have a general idea as a citizen, but I don't know what a lawyer would make of that. So that question would be one for a lawyer, and I'd like to ask them that. But first, we got to focus on getting it exposed and proving that NIST intentionally lied. Next question. If Richard Gage was designing a building, would he consider the question of fire as raised by the collapse of World Trade Center 7, or would he ignore it? That is a cute question. I like that, and that one is something that Richard would have to answer. But my guess would be, given his dedication to the 9/11 Truth Movement and all the work he's done to expose the lie of the official story regarding what happened to the 3 buildings in New York, my guess is that he would not factor in what NIST says happened to World Trade Center 7. He would simply go on and design the building as he normally would have before 9/11. Let's see. The next question. Why are you not sending your reports to the Flag Generals and Officers Network? I believe they are waiting to be called on, and you have a substantial numbers to have their attention. Well, I would love to send our information to anybody with any kind of audience or sway. I'm not familiar with these groups. I see this person has asked this question several times during the webinars. I would love for you to get in touch with me. A Steele at ae911truth.org. Let me know who these people are and what we should send them, and we could look into it, certainly, if they're a reasonable group. Do you think NIST will ever concede and admit to controlled demolition? That is a good question. It's a good speculation question. I think that at some point, if we work hard enough and get the message out, they are going to have to, or just be relegated to irrelevance, just like a lot of our government and political institutions have been. I think that we need to increase awareness and education. And, I mentioned those generations coming up earlier, those people who are kids now that are going to become the new congressmen and president of the United States. Well, that goes true for the people who are going to work at NIST in the future as well. New engineers and architects coming up, new government bureaucrats. And if we can influence them, we can work towards changing that culture in our society that keeps an issue like this under wraps. So, it's not like NIST is a person who has taken a stand. Those people who have participated in the cover-up and have claimed that there's nothing to this evidence, even though they really haven't debunked it, and they never tested for explosives, and they never really did, look into the actual motion of the buildings as they came down, the Twin Towers. All those things, those people are going to cycle out. There's going to be new people coming in. So NIST is an agency. Its opinion can change because new people come in with different ideas, different thoughts, and those are the people that we need to influence and get in charge of these offices. Next question. If no steel frame building has collapsed due to fire, in order for this to happen, would there have to be a previous example? Would that previous example then be the first time and therefore have to have a previous example? And I think this is a question that's challenging us, saying, well, you say it's never happened before, but for it to happen at all, there has to be a first time. Yes, but you can compare it to most steel frame high-rises fires. And so if you have something that is so unprecedented, again, this is not like a piece of the building just came away and then another piece came away and then like a third piece and then the whole thing came down. This was the entire building falling symmetrically straight down, just like a controlled demolition. So yes, for anything to happen, there has to be a first time. But in this case, we have so many examples of these high-rise fires. You have to compare them. And what does it look more like? So yes, you can make that argument, but what is the most probable explanation in this case? When it looks like a controlled demolition, has all the characteristics of a controlled demolition, and then there's an analysis of World Trade Center dust, and you're finding a residue of nanothermite, and then all of your conclusions need to lead to it being a controlled demolition, not jumping through all of these hoops and making all of these excuses to try to hold on to the myth that this was some kind of natural fire collapse. So yes, there would have to be a first time for everything, but in most cases, when there's a first time for something that's unprecedented and can't really happen because of the way the building is designed, with the steel conducting the heat, and when the explanation is so flimsy that a few thermally expanding beams can supposedly push a girder off its seat and cause the entire building to fail, then it's not likely the explanation. All right, it's not likely the first time something happened. It's probably the zillionth time something happened. In this case, it's the zillionth time there was a controlled demolition. Yes, I know zillionth is not a realistic number here, but I don't know how many controlled demolitions have ever happened in society, so I'm using that. But you get my drift. So I hope I've answered that question thoroughly. Next question, because we're running short on time here. This may even be the last one. And we got so many good ones, too. I've heard from several sources that the best way to contact Congress is by fax. It creates a hard copy, and they are more likely to read according to insiders. Well, that is good advice, and I will file that away, and we will consider that for future outreach. So thank you. I was there. I saw the looks on the firefighters' faces on 9/12. I am just pissed off. Well, that is good. If you feel that way, you should fill out the volunteer form under the What You Can Do tab. You can volunteer. Simplest thing to fill out, just some basic info, and we'll contact you. And you can channel that anger into something productive, working as a volunteer for AE 9/11 Truth. This is a good question to end it on. But how does AE for 9/11 Truth track its progress? It seems to me that there's not much momentum. I find it is nearly impossible to get people who accept the official story to take a fresh look. It is too upsetting to them. Well, that's true, but it's getting less and less upsetting and more acceptable as I've documented a little bit on this show and I've talked about on other shows, and new generations are coming up. And I look at progress a little differently than most people. A lot of people see progress in just black and white terms. You don't have a new investigation yet, so you have failed, right? But there's so many other milestones that we've reached. The fact that we are getting more architects and engineers. The fact that people are waking up to other issues, and the fact that this has become more socially acceptable and talked about. When Carl Golovin, and this is why I wish I could have played that clip on today's show, I'll play it in future shows, when he asked about the 48 pages at the museum, he was not immediately cut off. All right, that is a big difference from what people were facing several years ago. So as we wake up more people to this, we are changing the nature of society, because again, this is a blunt force trauma issue. Once you wake people up to the fact that Building 7 was brought down with a controlled demolition, it changes their whole mindset. It changes the entire way they look at the world, because how do you swallow that one? How do you deal with that afterwards? Wow, we're being lied to about something that big? Holy moly. So that is where I see success. It's the fourth dimensional aspect of our activism. And I like to say fourth dimensional because I guess some people in physics say that the fourth dimension is time. And so I equate that to what we're doing, because as more time passes and we keep talking about it, we're having an effect on the greater society in itself. So that's where we need to keep our spirits focused and keep our morale high, because we are making a difference in the seeds you plant today. You may not see them sprout. You may not even live to see them come up through the ground, but that doesn't mean they won't. And that is the real immortality. Is when you put thoughts in people's heads and you leave an imprint on society that lasts even longer than you do. So we just got to keep it up, keep positive, keep having fun dealing with this, even though it's a difficult issue, and never give up. And that is how victory comes. So we are out of time here on 9/11 Freefall. Keep tuning in. We're going to have some great interviews coming up. Remember, you can hear this program every Thursday night on No Lies Radio at 10 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock Pacific. You can also download MP3s of the show from the Internet Archive by going to 911freefall.com. This is Andy Steele saying have a great week. Good luck.